Hello again, everybody. John D. Healy. I'm back to you again with another podcast. It's good to talk. Got into podcasting because of my friend Tony McGurn. We wrote a book, got it out during COVID, and that's how it all started. You can get it on Amazon. It's on audio as well, this life story. Sponsors are Liffey Van Lines, moving company here in New York City, and they've been around for 50 years. They run very smoothly. Shout out to the Irish Examiner USA, paper here in New York. Very good for keeping up to date on events that are happening all over, and including a big festival coming up in Catskills. Next week I'll have Terry Patterson on. Today I do have a guest, and without further ado, I'm going to shoot to my next guest. But to let you know, I have something in common with my next guest. I was a volunteer with the Irish Wheelchair Association in Ireland in the 1990s. First to put in wheelchair access before it was a requirement in a restaurant I built. And then I campaigned for wheelchair access, disability facilities in all public buildings all out throughout the Ireland. That was with myself and a bunch of friends. And since that time, every new building in Ireland must have wheelchair access and proper facilities. Even a bank. Some hospitals didn't have wheelchair access, believe it or believe it not, in the 70s and 80s. So without further ado, I'm going to Dmitry Shevchenko. He's the Clinical Director of an organisation called Kind Deeds, dealing with soldiers from Ukraine. Dmitry, thanks for being here. You have a lot to explain and a lot to talk about, because I'm going to let you do the talking today. Tell me about you and where you're from.
Hi, John. Thank you for having me. I'm the Clinical Director of Kind Deeds. It's a nonprofit organization located here in New York City, and we specialize in bringing Ukrainian soldiers and civilian patients here to New York City for prosthetics and rehabilitation. We first organized a nonprofit back in 2022, within the first month when the war started in Ukraine, when Russia attacked, and there was an influx of refugees leaving Ukraine into Poland. President Alexander Ruptov, he went to Poland, to the border, and with help of our volunteers, we evacuated over 3,000 refugees, mostly women and children. And then within 6 months, our mission has shifted because there was a huge number of soldiers that are wounded and required prosthetics. And we brought our first two guys here October 2022 to New York City. We rented a house. I sponsored the rehab, had some connections with the prosthetics here in New York City. And now we've helped already 54 patients since we started this nonprofit.
Okay, well, that's very commendable. So it was February 24, 2022, when Russia invaded Ukraine. And that was the start of it. As I say, like love and war, easy to start, hard to end. So at that time, where were you at in terms of getting organised here in New York? You must have had help other than yourself, I'm sure. Was it just volunteers, or who fitted in with you?
Yeah, when the war started, it was shocking. I had a number of team members, since I run and operate some healthcare companies, and I had a team in Ukraine that had a hard time leaving Ukraine. And in the beginning, I started helping with just different medical supplies, like tourniquets, first aid kits for the soldiers on the front lines, some like an aim for a rifle. I sent a few aims, like night vision.
Okay.
And then I realized, I'm the best in healthcare, meaning this is what I'm familiar with. And teaming up Alexander, our president, we decided to bring soldiers here for prosthetics because the hospital system has been overwhelmed. A lot of them young, from 18 years old to their 70s. Soldiers just, had their limbs blown up and they're waiting for prosthetics, and we just needed to help. So that really was the push to our beginning.
So at that time, say when you arrived here in New York, Staten Island, I assume, it wasn't like a clinic set up ready for, like, say, medical procedures. And it was, am I right in saying that?
Yeah, so we initially rented a house, and so the way we operate, we have a house. Initially it was a 3-bedroom house where we teamed up with prosthetists throughout New York. We would take them to appointments, and it's a couple of times a week generally. And at the same time, they would receive rehab. But rehab were received in my clinics here in Brooklyn. And then they were also getting rehabilitation at Northwell Hospital, which is located in Northwell. They have multiple branches. So one of them is Staten Island University Hospital.
Okay.
And that's how they receive rehab. It's a couple of times a week they get it in Northwell, and then a couple of times a week they get it in our clinic here in Brooklyn. So, and generally they stay here for about 3 months on average.
So the evaluation process then, I guess, from, let's take one guy, like his evaluation, let's say he's lost a leg or an arm. Who does that process of the evaluation? And then, from what I gather, the prosthetics are made here in America. So at least we could say they're avoiding the tariffs. No pun intended.
Yes. So the way it works, I would get initially on a Zoom call with a potential patient, and generally it's done with the help of volunteers. We discuss the injury, we get the medical history, the date of the injury, date of the amputation, and then from there we get on a Zoom call again. Right, we get the measurements and we identify if this is a right patient for our setup.
Sure.
We help with the visa, so we have direct contact with general counselor in Kiev. Initially, we actually had to bring them to Poland because American embassy was not accepting any Ukrainians at their embassy, but they made an exception for us eventually in 2023. Very grateful for that. It made our process a lot easier. And then, they come to Kiev to get a visa. Once they get a visa, they go to Poland because there's no flight to Ukrainian country. It's generally by train or bus. And then from there, they fly out, we house them here in Staten Island, and within the first week, they see a prosthetist.
Okay.
And then a temporary socket is made within the first week, right? And then depending how the stump is the residual limp, correct? Depending how it forms, they generally wear that initial prosthetic for about 6 weeks. Right, and then we notice that they're ready, it doesn't bother them, they're comfortable walking around in a prosthetic, then we decide when to make a permanent prosthetic. At the same time as they're getting rehab, they're getting their prosthetic appointments, they're also visiting different museums, they get invited to different activities, so a lot of it is physical rehab as well as, I would say, psychological rehab, because there's a lot of supporters, Ukrainians as well as Americans, and not only, and just being around people, that are kind of grateful for their service, people that want to hear their stories. I think it's very uplifting for these guys here.
Well, that's very good. I was about to come to that in terms of, say, like the loss, like anybody has a loss. If you say someone loses a parent or loses a boyfriend, girlfriend, a sister, there is that emotional loss where the person would need for the trauma some like counselling like mental support to help them get over the shock. I've had people on here like that injuries, say, where they fell off a horse. Like one guy was Declan Murphy. He wrote a book about his thing and he was almost left for dead. Story is interesting. It's on a podcast. A lot of people like motorbike accidents and things like that. I know Rehab in Dublin, they provide counselling. And if it's something like a car crash or something sudden. In case of Ukraine, I understand a lot of the accidents are from landmines. And that's shocking because it's such a cowardly way to fight a war with landmines, because you're killing or injuring innocent people. But getting back to your facility one more time. So the timing then from the time the patient arrives to the time that he has a new prosthetic, is that like a 3, 4, 6 month period?
Generally, depending on how complex the amputation is. So anything above the knee, generally it'll take up to 3 months. So just the recent group that just left back to Ukraine last week, they were here for 3.5. That's a little longer than we generally keep our patients here. Generally, it's anywhere from 2 to 3 months. And above the knee patients generally stay here up to 5 months. So we are expecting a new group this month, within a couple of weeks. The patients with above the knee amputations. Those are more complex. Those require longer rehab because the knee joint it's a complex joint. It takes longer to train how to walk in that prosthetic, and it is more expensive. It's probably more than double the cost of below the knee prosthetic.
Okay. And things that can go wrong, like in any hospital situation, like with anybody, say, getting a knee replacement in particular, like there's always the danger of infections and things that you hope don't happen because it prolongs the healing process. And that leads me on to medications, like source of medications. How do you deal with all of that? That's a whole other world in itself.
Yeah, so we are luckily here. There's no infections because there's no surgeries, right? Sockets are made. It's like a orthotic, right, or splint, where it's an art and science to an extent, right? So there's no surgical procedure.
Okay.
when it comes to prosthetics. The only patient that we had here was a civilian patient that left recently, a couple of weeks ago. She had a jaw blown off pretty much from a missile. There's a young female patient that was here for over a year, and it was one of the doctors, Dr. Hoffman in Northwell University Hospital. He was the one operating on her. He facilitated her trip here, and we hosted her here at Kindit's house in Staten Island. So that was the only time there was a surgical procedure involved, actually multiple surgical procedures. So all that was managed by the doctors and nurses here in Staten Island. For our soldiers, we do have certain accidents that might happen or secondary underlying conditions might come into play. And we do have, volunteers. One of our board members, he's a doctor and VP of Northwell, Dr. Eugene Haluka. So he's very helpful. When we need any medications, when we need any medical help here outside of prosthetics, that's when he comes in, and he's been very helpful.
Well, I must commend all of you and the doctors as well. It's challenging. You're like the clinical director, I guess that's your title, I assume, Dmitry. But it's in a sense like you're managing everything from, it's like a hotel from the check-in to the check-out. So when you say you have a new lot coming next week, well, the beds have to be ready for the guys coming over and in, and the guys exiting, like all of their arrangements have to be made too in that regard. So I'm just going to call on young Jimmy to sing a song for kind deeds and you, Dmitry. He's a young man starting out his life. I hope he'll never have an injury or to go through any of those losses per se. And when I come back, I'm going to ask you about some more uplifting stuff about talents that the people have, like sports and music and singing. I understand you had a boxer recently in your patient list. So we'll come back to that. So Jimmy, please sing a song for kind deeds. Okay. Thanks, Jimmy.
I don't know if you can see the changes that have come over me in these last few days. I've been afraid that I might drift away. I've been telling old stories, singing songs that made me think about where I came from, and that's the reason why I seem so far away today. But let me tell you that I love you and that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me. Now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Oh, I have moved and I've kept on moving, proved the points that I needed proving. I have lost the friends that I needed losing, found others on the way. I have tried and I've kept on trying, stolen dreams, yes, there's no denying. I have traveled far with my conscience flying, somewhere with the wind. But let me tell you that I love you and that I think about you all the time. Caledonia, you're calling me, and now I'm going home. And if I should become a stranger, you know that it would make me more than sad. Caledonia's been everything I've ever had. Now I'm sitting here before the fire, the empty room, the forest choir. Oh, the flames that couldn't get any higher, they've withered now, they've gone. But I am steady, thinking my way's clear, and now I know what I'll do tomorrow when the hands are shaking and the kisses flow.
I'm back to you, Dmitry, and before I go on to the kind of social activities and sports and all that, is there someone on your team that deals with general health? Like say diet would be something I would think about, diet for everybody, of course. Weight loss maybe because it's less weight on the limbs, less weight maybe on the heart. I assume you have somebody that deals with all of that, or like any situation where somebody is.
You know what? Actually, we do not. It would be great to have, but we don't because, again, we're a nonprofit, and so the way we operate is based on fundraising that we do. It's either going to churches or concerts. We don't have any grants, so the recent federal changes with grants have not affected us to any extent because we don't have any grants. So having a dietitian generally would be beneficial, but we cannot afford one, and we haven't had a volunteer that was willing. Because also, if we have a dietitian, that means we have to abide by a certain, kind of process when it comes to cooking. And we don't have a chef, so the way we get our food, we get it with certain things we get from Costco, and there's certain things we actually have. A local store in Staten Island helping out a couple of times a month. And then we also have a very well-known restaurant here in Manhattan called Veselka.
Okay.
It's been there for many, many years. So they committed to, supply some of the food a couple of times a week for our soldiers. So that's been very helpful because, like I said, we only have 2 paid employees. One of them is the driver that lives with the soldiers. He's ex-military himself. And our president. The rest are all volunteers. Nobody else really gets paid.
Well, I will be doing some fundraising for Kind Deeds myself in the next few weeks. My friend has a football event coming up, so he's going to be giving 50% of that. That's Irish football coming up at the end of July, so he'll be giving 10% of the proceeds to Kind Deeds for that. I'm glad I mentioned about the dietitian now. It's good for me to have knowledge and be aware because, people say I've been around, and some people say I've been around before. Getting back to activities.
Appreciate it, by the way. Yeah.
This is why it's good to talk, and this is the name of the podcast, and it's good to have a guest on. And I like to have people like yourself on that, do give your own time as well, and give your time to help others. That's really, really and deserve it. A horrible war. We hope it ends soon, but damage is damage. So getting back to some, you guys get there. Some of them were in real life before the war. They maybe have been engineers, or they may have been sports people or IT guys. So entertainment-wise, do they get themselves busy to, I suppose I could say, to distract themselves, in that term?
I mean, like I said, we try to get them involved in various activities. There's always something going on, right? So either it's a trip to a museum. This recent group ended up going to Niagara Falls. They ended up going to a few other cities. We had groups of soldiers that went to Miami. Somebody went to Chicago. Some people went. We actually brought a few guys to fundraising in California. And then locally, there's plenty of volunteers. People taking to Manhattan for Ukrainian events, fairs. There's a big fair coming up, I believe, this month in Manhattan on Lower East Side. Intrepid Museum.
Okay.
Depending so when they get here, we generally ask, what are your interests? What is it that you would like to see? We create a list, right? Definitely Times Square, some of the museums. We get invited to Carnegie Hall often. We get invited to other concerts, a lot of Ukrainian concerts we've been to. So generally, again, they stay busy here. We also have volunteers that are into fishing. So they invite them to fishing trips, things of that nature. So everybody's different. They like different things, and we try to accommodate based on their preferences.
Again, for the benefit of my listeners, that have tuned into, they can always play back and record. It's like Kiev, for example, the capital of Ukraine, is very similar in size to Dublin City in Dublin, and probably social life in terms of bars and restaurants. I know there's a bar called O'Brien's. There's other bars, restaurants, and they're open from noontime, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock in the day to 11 o'clock at night. So the social scene is pretty much what they're used to in terms of New York nightlife and New York social life in general. And New York is good for activities and all that. So I know I will be in touch with you to arrange some stuff. And at the moment, I'm involved with an art gallery here in Manhattan. So I have lots of art. If people want to run charity auctions, I can donate art for free, and they can get involved in activities like that, to say the least. Your website, I must commend you on as well, kinddeeds.org, and that has a good lot of information there, pretty well laid out. people can see how they can donate to kinddeeds.org. And you also have a wish list, through Amazon, where people can buy a little gift for people, or for the charity, of course. And that's another good way. Now, last week I did have a sports massage therapist on. He's based here in Manhattan. His name is Adam Cardona, and he is with the Elite Healer Sports Massage. So I'm not repeating myself. We covered a lot in that interview with Adam on the general benefits of massage, sports massage. So I know your team there, I'm sure, has various massage therapists dealing with what they're dealing with in terms of the body, the physical body. In terms of, I should joke with Adam and say if one of your guys goes to him, they should get a discount, of course, because not to charge them an arm and a leg, of course. All right, I think we covered a lot there. Adam Cardona is based here in New York City, and we'll put up his information as well in case anybody wants to check out his facilities and what he does. I look forward to meeting you in next week probably, because I have some things I want to donate to kinddeeds.org and some friends of mine too. So let's see, did we cover anything else? I don't usually keep a checklist, but let me see, in general, did I leave anything out? So Jimmy did sing for us, that's good. And O'Brien's, there's another bar in Kyiv called Andrews. Andrews and O'Brien's are two really good. So I think we covered a lot of stuff. I did mention landmines, and I was a big fan of Princess Diana. She created a lot of awareness of the destruction of landmines. So I think if any people have questions or comments, they can contact me at jhfornews@yahoo.com. They can definitely log on to kinddeeds.org, and there's a comment section under this podcast where they can leave comments, or if they have more questions for me, anything to do with kinddeeds.org, I can pass on to you, Dmitry. So, anything you'd like to add? I'll give you the last word.
Yeah, absolutely. So you mentioned massage therapists. We actually had one, a great volunteer, Victor Beck. He was volunteering, coming here to Brooklyn to help the guys with different issues that might not be related to prosthetics. It could be back issues from different disbalances, or maybe other injuries that they had secondary to their amputation. And Amazon wish list, a lot of the things on that wish list is actually household items like soaps, shampoos,
Okay.
bags. So those are the type of things we kind of have there. Then if anybody wants to, directly contact me, I can put my email out there. It's dimitro@kinddeeds.org. I'll be happy to speak to whoever reaches out. And, it has kind of could share, the cause that we working towards, right, to help as many soldiers and civilians that were affected by the war.
One more question before I go. The location you're in now, is that just in Staten Island, or is there more than one location?
Yeah, it's just Staten Island. The guys actually live in Staten Island, and then our medical staff and therapy staff and prosthetic staff, they throughout New York City.
Okay, all right. And so you have one group going back to their normal life, or as normal as possible, and you have another group on the way over.
Yeah.
I'm sure if I have any more questions, we'll be in touch, and if my listeners have any more questions, we will be in touch as well. So I don't think I have anything else to say except keep up the good work. You really deserve to be commended, and I hope the war ends soon. With that, I guess I'll sign out. I will sign out in my native language because I was born in Ireland. So I speak, my first language is Irish, my second language is English. Thanks to the Queen of England, I speak perfect English, better English than the Queen of England, but that's easy because she's dead. So Dmitry, I'm going to say goodbye to you. So we say Slán, Sin Scéal means that's the story. The Space Scéal means there will always be another story. On Gafol, so it's like goodbye for now.
Thank you for having me.